My name is John Jessen. I'm an architect with about 40 years of experience. In the last 20 plus years, I have been focused on proton therapy. And in the early days, proton therapy was new buildings. Of course, we have designed buildings around every vendor system. And so we're very familiar with what each vendor really needs in the building and how it needs to interface with their equipment. In recent years, we have been focusing on not just new buildings, but now upgrades. Upgrades is a whole new project type. The benefits of upgrading a proton therapy center are, of course, to capture all the newest technology that the vendor is offering in their equipment that may have not been in existence when the center was first built. It's interesting because we have a few case studies now in the world, 4 actually, upgrade projects. They all share one thing in common, and that is to capture the newest technology that's available. But you have to keep in mind that some of these centers were built 20, 25 years ago, the earliest ones, at least in the US, and they're still operating with the equipment that was available at that time. Today we have advancements in technology like pencil beam scanning that are offering more advanced capabilities and treatments. So that's the major and primary reason people are looking at upgrading their equipment. It's not really a matter of end of life of the equipment. It's more of a matter of capturing the newest technology that's available today. So of the 4 upgrade projects that are either happening right now or being contemplated in the world, each one of them is changing or needing to change the physical environment, the facility, in different ways. In one case in Boston, the equipment is being upgraded to the newest technology from the same vendor. And that's really important because it's of a similar footprint versus a couple other projects that we're working on right now where we're upgrading the existing facility with a different vendor's equipment, which has a completely different footprint. The changes to the facility, reconstructing the vaults, tearing out the vaults and putting new vaults in is much more elaborate work and more extensive reconstruction in many cases. In one of the other case studies, the existing vaults are being replaced with a different vendor's equipment, but it's a much smaller footprint. So it's actually fitting within the gantry footprint. And we're just having to make accommodations within it to carry the load of that new footprint in a different way. One of these cases, we're putting a different vendor's equipment into an existing footprint, and it fits within the gantry widthwise, but not lengthwise. So we're having to actually blow out the back wall so that we can accommodate this new footprint. And so there's different impacts on existing buildings depending on the upgrade and depending on the vendor that's selected and the equipment that is selected to go into the existing footprint. So one of the important elements of an upgrade is its impact on current patient volume or patient flow. In the case of MD Anderson in Houston, they had built a second center and it went active over a year ago, started treating patients. And now that it's fully ramped up, the plan is to upgrade the old center with new equipment without impacting their flow at all, because now they have the new center that will carry the full load of the patient flow. And then in the case of another project that is currently anticipating an upgrade, they don't have another center that they can rely on to offset their patient treatments. So what we're looking at in this case is a phased implementation. And if you have a system like they do that has a single accelerator with a beam line that treats multiple treatment rooms, we're looking at upgrading the last room first so that the other rooms closest to the accelerator can continue to treat patients. And then we'll go room by room in a phased and sequenced upgrade. It takes longer, but it allows them to continue treating patients without interrupting the operation. The primary goal in an upgrade is to not impact or negatively impact patient treatment and operation. I was just asked this last week to put together a schedule for an upgrade project. There are a few elements that really stand out that are very different. The first task that needs to be undertaken is figuring out the plan of decommissioning and removal of the existing equipment. The other unique feature that takes time is really analyzing the existing building and its conformation with the vendor's interface requirements. We need to really analyze the existing building to see if it can accommodate those requirements. And what we're finding is in some cases it does, in some cases it doesn't. So we have to develop a plan of attack for those gaps. We call it a gap analysis. And then we have a reverse engineering where we determine what we have to change in the building to accommodate the equipment, or where the vendor has to change the equipment to some degree to fit into the building. There's also a timeline for the equipment. when will it be arriving on the site? Each vendor has a specific timeline of producing that equipment once their contract is signed. We have to work that into the schedule, whether it's an upgrade project or a new build. There's a lot of footwork that has to happen before that point. For that reason, we're often getting engaged earlier in the process to do all the planning of the decommissioning and the planning of the gaps well before the architects are underway with the design of the renovation. So typically, new FDA clearance is not required for an upgrade project. It's already in place for the existing system, but we don't want to trigger by changing the system new FDA clearance. And we went through this process at MGH. They made it clear that we really had to retain the system as it is so that we didn't risk needing to go back through the FDA for clearance. It would elongate the project and first patient treatment would be pushed way out into the future, and nobody wanted that. So we had to recognize that we couldn't change the system. It's already cleared. So the reverse engineering that we're doing with the reconstruction, changing the building to fit the equipment, we're always looking at if we need to change the building, we're going to do that to accommodate the equipment so we don't trigger a new FDA clearance. Sometimes there's questions about CON, certificate of need. If we're changing the quantity of rooms, that might have an impact on the CON. If you have a certificate for a certain size facility or number of rooms, and if you're adding another room somehow in this upgrade, that might be something worth considering. But typically, we're not engaged with needing to get a new certificate of need for an upgrade project. Most projects to date are upgrading with the same number of rooms that they exist with today. So one thing that's fascinating about these upgrades, and one thing that we've learned, is it sure would have been nice to build in a little bit more flexibility into the original building. And I talk a lot about the vendor's interface, building interface requirements, and we have to design buildings that are specific to their requirements. But in the process of designing those exact parameters, can we add a little bit of space? Why not? As long as we're meeting the requirements of the vendor for the equipment, making the footprint a little larger perhaps, while still meeting interface building requirements, might allow us to change that equipment to a larger piece of equipment in the future, or vice versa. There are 4 projects out in the world right now that are doing upgrades. Some of them are changing their equipment from one equipment vendor to another, or from one specific model from a vendor to a different model. For one project in particular, the equipment isn't fitting in the existing vaults. So you start to see how important it is then to build flexibility into all news centers as much as we can. This will help our clients 20, 40 years from now be able to upgrade a little bit more quicker perhaps, more cost effectively, even give them more choices in terms of the system. So flexibility is becoming a key hot topic right now in the world of proton therapy design and projects.